We live in a world that trains us to separate the physical from the emotional, the spiritual from the sensual, and the energetic from the real. But this is a lie. Nothing is just physical. Everything, every single thing, is energy. Every action carries a vibration. Every touch, every glance, every word, every experience, even the most intimate and carnal ones, are exchanges of frequency, of vibration, of belief systems clashing or harmonizing. When a woman takes your P3N1S in her mouth, it may seem like a simple act of pleasure or desire, but energetically, it is a moment that reveals far more than we consciously understand. It exposes the truth about how we see ourselves, how we interpret value, and how deeply we are influenced by our hidden insecurities and emotional programming. Most men go through these kinds of experiences with no awareness of what they're feeling, what's happening inside them, or why it matters. They think of sex as a prize, a goal, a conquest, a measure of manhood. They believe the physical act is an affirmation that they're good enough, desirable enough, or alpha enough, but that's where the illusion begins. Because if it takes an external act, especially one as intimate as this, to confirm your worth, then your identity is built on a house of cards. And when she stops, when she doesn't call back, when she doesn't do it again, or when she does it with someone else, the entire structure comes crashing down. Why? Because your value was never real, it was borrowed. It was temporarily inflated by someone else's behavior. That's not confidence. That's dependency disguised as dominance. What really happens in that moment is an energetic mirror is held up, and that mirror reflects everything you try to hide. Are you feeling powerful because she did that, or are you feeling validated because you never felt powerful to begin with? Did you feel a rush of control because deep down you often feel ignored or unseen? Do you think her action proves something about your desirability because you secretly fear you're not enough? These aren't small questions, these are everything. Because if you can't sit with these thoughts, if you can't interrogate the energetic experience behind the physical one, you will live in emotional repetition. Different women, same wound. Different situations, same confusion. You won't rise, you'll just cycle through temporary highs, masking permanent insecurities. You have to understand that everything in your life, including your most private personal experiences, is a reflection of your vibration. You are constantly attracting the people, circumstances, and reactions that resonate with your self-image. So when you interpret her action as proof that you're wanted or loved or worthy, you're revealing that deep down, you didn't believe that until she did it. That's dangerous. That's not power, it's vulnerability in disguise. Real masculine energy isn't reactive to pleasure. It doesn't get thrown off its center by intimacy. It sees the energy for what it is. It understands the exchange happening beneath the surface, and it stays rooted, present, aware. Sexual energy is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. It creates life. It opens portals of transformation. But when it's unconscious, when it's used to fill voids or feed ego, it becomes toxic. You lose yourself in the illusion of the moment. You forget who you are without her hands on you. You forget that you were powerful before she touched you, not because she touched you. That's why so many men feel empty afterward, because they didn't gain anything. They just temporarily borrowed a feeling of significance and now it's gone, and in that emptiness they start to chase. They chase more sex, more attention, more affirmation, never realizing the real problem was never about women at all. It was about the absence of their own energetic grounding. You need to understand this if you want to evolve. Because until you do, you will keep seeking power in places that only drain you. You'll keep measuring your worth by how much she gives instead of how much you radiate. You'll keep interpreting every act of closeness as a reward instead of recognizing it as a reflection. The truth is, her actions don't define you. Your reaction to her actions does. That's where your power is. That's where your energy lives, not in the act itself, but in what it reveals. What you feel during and after intimacy is a direct broadcast of your vibration. And if that vibration is rooted in fear, lack, or insecurity, then no amount of pleasure will change your destiny. When a woman chooses to go there with you, she's engaging in a space that magnifies energy. You can either use that space to observe and elevate, or you can let it trap you in cycles of emotional dependence. Most men never see this. They think it's just sex. But nothing is just anything. It's all vibration. It's all belief. It's all energy. That act, that moment, that physical connection. It's an opportunity to examine who you are, what you believe, and what you're carrying inside you. If you're feeling powerful, check whether it's true power or just inflated pride. If you're feeling doubt or shame, ask where it comes from and what it's trying to show you. Because the moment you stop running from the emotional meaning of your physical experiences, you begin to reclaim your energy. You stop seeing sex as the source of your strength and start using it as a mirror for growth. How you interpret her action reveals more about you than it does about her. When a woman takes your P3N1S in her mouth, most men see it as confirmation, an unspoken validation that they are wanted, admired, powerful. But this moment doesn't truly say anything about the woman's feelings unless you're deeply attuned to her energy. What it truly reflects is your own self-image. It's not about the act, it's about how you interpret it, and that interpretation is completely filtered through the lens of your beliefs about yourself. You don't see reality as it is, you see it as you are. You see what your subconscious is programmed to recognize. And if your subconscious has been shaped by years of rejection, shame, doubt, or confusion, you'll misread even the most intimate moments. Many men enter sexual situations with silent desperation, hungry to be chosen, hungry to feel enough, hungry to be seen as masculine or competent. That hunger often hides behind a mask, charm, dominance, sarcasm, or indifference. But the moment a woman gives them what they crave, they either inflate with pride or collapse with confusion. They either become obsessed or completely indifferent. Why? Because they were never grounded to begin with. They were waiting for something external to tell them how to feel. That's not masculinity, that's emotional submission. Your identity was never anchored within yourself. It was tethered to her response, to her performance, to her willingness to accept you in that intimate act. When your self-image is low, you interpret her behavior through the filter of insecurity. If she does something sexually intimate, you may tell yourself, "This means I'm finally desirable, finally enough." That thought might boost you momentarily, but it also exposes a dangerous truth. You didn't feel desirable or enough until she did that. Your self-worth is dependent on her. That's the root of emotional chaos. That's where obsession starts. That's where neediness is born. That's where jealousy, control, and self-sabotage all grow. Not from her actions, but from your interpretation of them. The truth is, she could have done it out of love, curiosity, lust, boredom, or even manipulation. But none of that will matter if you've already made her act about you. If you're telling yourself a story that her intimacy equals proof of your value, then you've handed your emotional authority to someone else. And the moment she shifts, pulls away, sets a boundary, chooses someone else, you spiral. Because she didn't just stop a behavior. In your mind, she revoked your worth. She closed the faucet you were drinking validation from. And now you're not just missing her, you're missing yourself. Because you never learned how to see your own value without her. Al, you man doesn't base his confidence on how others behave. He doesn't confuse her body with approval or mistake her mouth for emotional security. He knows exactly who he is before, during, and after any intimate act. His identity doesn't shift based on whether she's affectionate or distant. His interpretation is not emotionally reactive. It's observant, grounded, centered. He sees her actions, but he does not turn them into a measure of his worth. That's the difference between someone who leads with presence and someone who lives in performance. So many men walk through life like emotional sensors, always scanning for signs of approval, always desperate for the next hit of worthiness. They use sex like a drug, looking for a rush, a high, a momentary escape from feeling like they don't matter. But drugs wear off, the high fades, and when it does, they're left with themselves, naked, unsure, scrambling to repeat the experience just to feel okay again. This cycle is not about women, it's not about sex. It's about interpretation. It's about the deep, unspoken belief that I am not enough unless she proves it, and until that belief is exposed and rewritten, no amount of sex, love, or connection will ever make you feel truly secure. Your self-image determines how you receive everything. Two men can have the same sexual experience and walk away with completely different meanings. One might feel empowered, calm, grounded, aware. The other might feel addicted, unstable, overly attached, or deeply afraid of losing her. The difference is not the woman, it's the internal programming, it's how they see themselves. A powerful self-image absorbs intimacy without distortion. It doesn't get high or low, it stays steady. It enjoys the moment without becoming enslaved by it. It recognizes pleasure as part of life, not the source of identity. If you want to rise, you have to confront this within yourself. You have to ask what that act really meant to you and why. What did it trigger? What emotions did it release? Did it make you feel bigger than you are or expose how small you secretly feel? Were you looking at her? Or were you looking at what she made you feel about you? These are the questions that separate growth from stagnation. These are the reflections that break the cycle. You cannot build a future on an unstable self-image, because no matter what you achieve, what she gives, or how many times it happens, you will always be trying to outrun the fear that it could stop. And as long as that fear runs you, your destiny is not your own. It belongs to your interpretation of someone else's behavior. Your emotions are not the enemy. They are not flaws to be suppressed or weaknesses to be hidden. They are signals, guidance systems, messengers from the deeper parts of your psyche, constantly pointing toward what's unresolved, what's misaligned, what's unhealed. Most men have been conditioned to ignore these signals or bury them under bravado, sexual validation, or constant distraction. But in doing so, they lose one of the most powerful tools for transformation. Every emotional reaction you feel, whether it's insecurity, guilt, shame, confusion, anger, or even the post-intimacy emptiness, is not random. It's data, and if you learn how to read it, you'll discover that your emotions are trying to teach you who you really are and what you need to evolve. After a deep sexual experience, especially one as intimate and revealing as oral sex, you're not just left with physical sensations. You're left with an emotional residue. For some, it's satisfaction. For others, it's vulnerability. For many, it's confusion. Why do you feel that specific emotion? Why does something that's supposed to feel good sometimes leave you feeling anxious or hollow? This is the beginning of awareness. If you slow down and observe what you're feeling rather than rushing to the next distraction or encounter, you'll start to notice patterns. You'll begin to trace emotions back to their roots. And those roots almost always begin with your beliefs about yourself, about women, about love, power, sex, and what it all means. The real problem is not the emotion. The problem is what we do with it. When you feel something uncomfortable, your conditioning will tell you to suppress it, avoid it, numb it, or blame someone else. You might tell yourself, I'm overthinking, or it doesn't matter, or it's just sex, when deep down you're feeling abandoned, judged, used, or exposed. You might bury that feeling with another hookup, another drink, another scroll through your phone, but it never goes away. It gets stored, and when you ignore enough of those stored emotions, they turn into your personality. You become reactive without knowing why. You become emotionally unstable, unable to stay grounded when a woman gives or withholds attention. That's not because women are confusing. It's because your emotional compass has been ignored for too long. There's a reason you feel what you feel, and instead of rejecting it, you need to ask what it's pointing to. Emotions are like pain receptors. They don't show up to ruin your day. They show up to reveal imbalance. That discomfort you feel after sex is not shame. It's awareness knocking at the door. It's your deeper self asking, are you aligned with what just happened? If not, that feeling is your opportunity to grow, not your punishment. But growth only comes through emotional honesty, and emotional honesty requires stillness. It requires you to sit with the discomfort without numbing it, without running from it, without trying to change it into something more pleasant. That's how transformation begins, Men are taught to fear emotions because we associate them with weakness, loss of control, or irrationality. But the truth is, ignoring emotions is what keeps you weak. Not feeling is what keeps you reactive. Emotional strength isn't about pretending you're unaffected. It's about knowing exactly what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and how to use that awareness to choose your next step with clarity and self-command. The man who can feel deeply without being consumed by his feelings is a man who cannot be manipulated, who cannot be thrown off his purpose, who cannot be emotionally hijacked by every intimate experience. Intimacy brings things to the surface. It awakens parts of you that normal life often doesn't touch. It opens channels of emotional vulnerability, and if you're not aware of that, you'll misinterpret those feelings. You'll confuse emotional depth for weakness or think detachment equals power. But real power is integration. Real power is being able to feel fully and still remain centered. It's being able to acknowledge your hurt, your confusion, your disappointment, without letting it distort your identity. When a woman touches you intimately, your emotions might rise, and that's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that something within you is ready to be seen. Don't ignore that signal. Don't drown it out. Lean into it. Ask it what it wants to reveal. That's how men grow beyond performance and into purpose. Your emotions also show you your triggers. If you feel unusually attached after sex, it could be because you've equated physical connection with emotional safety. If you feel rejected because she didn't follow up with affection, it may reveal a wound from childhood or previous relationships where love was conditional. Every reaction is a reflection. Every uncomfortable feeling is a coded message, pointing you to what needs healing, where your power is leaking, where your beliefs are limiting. But none of that information is accessible if you suppress your emotions. You can't heal what you refuse to feel. You can't evolve if you're afraid to explore your own emotional terrain. You must start seeing feelings as tools, not threats. They are inner technology designed to sharpen your awareness and guide you toward alignment. Negative emotions, especially after intimacy, are not accidents. They are precise indicators of where you need to shift. They tell you what you still believe about yourself, what still hurts, what still needs validation. And most importantly, they reveal the gap between who you are and who you have the potential to become. The man who avoids these messages stays in emotional infancy. The man who listens rises into emotional mastery. The pause between action and reaction is where all your power lies. Most people never even notice that space. They are too quick to respond, too eager to feel something, too desperate to assign meaning to an experience before they've even understood what they truly felt. But in that moment, right after an intimate act, especially one as exposing and symbolic as a woman taking your P3N1S in her mouth, there is an emotional ripple. Most men react to that ripple without examining it. They allow their egos, their fears, or their unresolved emotional patterns to assign meaning. And because of that, they repeat the same cycles of emotional confusion, attachment, or withdrawal again and again, never realizing that they have the ability to transform every experience if they could just pause long enough to observe what is happening internally. Awareness is not just about knowing what happened. It's about understanding why you felt what you felt and what that feeling is trying to tell you about your subconscious beliefs. Most men operate on emotional autopilot. If she shows desire, they feel valuable. If she pulls away, they feel rejected. If she gives intimacy, they feel powerful. If she withholds it, they feel lost. This back and forth is not a reflection of her complexity. It's a reflection of the man's lack of inner awareness. Without awareness, you are a puppet to your own programming. You don't respond, you react. You don't observe, you assume. And assumptions built on emotional insecurity always lead to misinterpretation, which leads to disappointment, which leads to more emotional chaos. To break free from this loop, you have to step into that space after the experience and pause. Not scroll, not distract, not jump to conclusions, pause. Ask yourself what you're feeling, not what you think you should feel, not what society says you should feel, but what's actually vibrating inside your chest. Are you feeling proud? Why? Are you feeling uncertain? About what are you feeling connected? Or are you just relieved that someone accepted you momentarily? That kind of self-inquiry is not weakness. It is the highest form of masculine power, being able to hold space for yourself without flinching, without running, without needing to assign blame or grasp at instant clarity. When you become aware of your emotional reactions, you start to understand that they are not fixed truths. They are fluid responses shaped by your past, your trauma, your conditioning, and your current state of consciousness. If you were raised to associate sex with validation, then you will constantly seek sexual encounters to feel worthy. But awareness allows you to question that. It allows you to sit in the aftermath of intimacy and say, what part of me just got triggered? What old belief just got activated? Is this feeling real, or is it a projection? These questions are what separate an emotionally grounded man from a reactive boy. One observes and evolves, the other spirals and repeats. Turning reaction into revelation is a decision. It's a commitment to living with your eyes open, even when the truth stings. And the truth often does, because sometimes awareness will show you that you weren't attracted to her. You were attracted to the idea of being desired. Sometimes it will show you that you weren't feeling love. You were feeling relief from loneliness. Sometimes it will reveal that your confidence was never yours. It was borrowed from her temporary attention. These realizations can be jarring, even painful, but they are also liberating, because once you see the source of your reactions, you're no longer controlled by them. You can rewrite the story, you can reclaim your energy, you can shift the narrative from unconscious reaction to conscious creation. It is in these moments of stillness, of emotional observation, that you begin to take control of your destiny. Because until you understand how your inner world works, your outer world will always confuse you. You'll blame her for being distant when it was really your attachment that made you feel abandoned. You'll resent her for pulling away when it was your interpretation that made you feel betrayed. The awareness to distinguish what happened from how you experienced it is the awareness that creates freedom. No more being led by invisible emotional strings. No more self-worth tied to someone else's behavior. Just clarity, self-trust, and emotional mastery. This pause after intimacy is not a minor detail. It is the hinge on which your entire life can swing. In that pause, you can unravel years of conditioning. In that pause, you can choose not to follow the same emotional script that's kept you stuck. You can replace judgment with curiosity. You can replace shame with compassion. You can replace ego with honesty. And in doing so, you gain a level of control most men will never taste. Not over others, but over yourself. That is the control that changes your future. That is the power that shifts your vibration. That is the strength that separates those who live reactively from those who build consciously. At the heart of emotional maturity and true masculine power lies the ability to shift the narrative you've been living by. For most men, especially those conditioned by external validation, the story they live in is one of proving, chasing, needing, and attaching their worth to what others, especially women, do or don't give them. This becomes painfully obvious in sexual dynamics. When a woman gives herself to you in an intimate way, particularly when she takes your P3N1S in her mouth, your internal reaction reveals whether you're living from neediness or from grounded purpose. If your confidence swells and crashes based on her sexual openness, then you're not truly powerful. You're borrowing a sense of value from her actions, and borrowed power always runs out. Shifting the narrative means you stop seeing sex as proof that you're enough and start seeing yourself as enough regardless of what happens. You begin the uncomfortable but necessary work of detaching from the emotional addiction of being chosen, desired, or pleased. You stop asking, "What does this mean about me?" every time a woman does or doesn't do something, and start asking, "What part of me still thinks I need this to feel valid?" That shift is not simple. It demands that you break the emotional patterns that have defined your manhood since adolescence. It demands that you admit where your identity has been outsourced to moments of intimacy and where your sense of self still relies on sexual outcomes. Purpose replaces performance. A man who leads with purpose does not use sex to feel like a man. He brings his full, integrated manhood into sex. He isn't using her to patch a hole in his self-image. He doesn't fear whether she will stay, approve, or compare him. He is not there for ego. He is there in presence. He's not obsessed with being validated. He's focused on expressing, experiencing, connecting, and observing. That kind of man changes the game. He becomes less reactive, more magnetic, more emotionally intelligent, and deeply aligned. And women feel that difference. They feel the safety of a man who isn't trying to be someone, but simply is. They feel the power of a man who doesn't seek approval because he already lives in his own. This shift is also about ownership. No more hiding behind her actions as an excuse for how you feel. No more blaming her behavior for your emotional instability. If you felt rejected because she didn't initiate again, own that feeling. If you felt anxious because you thought she would pull away after sex, sit with that fear. Don't cover it with arrogance or chase it away with distractions. Look at it, understand it, then rise above it, not by force but by rewiring your story. Tell yourself the truth. You are not broken, not less than not missing something. You've just been operating under a belief system that told you your value had to be proven by what others give you. That system was never yours. It was handed to you, but you have the right and the power to outgrow it. Purpose allows you to bring consistency to your emotional state. You're not thrown off by temporary affection or distance. You're not destabilized by intimacy or silence. You have a mission bigger than approval, and because of that, you show up differently. Your conversations change, your energy shifts, your boundaries become clearer. You no longer tolerate confusion or emotional games because you're not trying to manipulate outcomes. You're focused on truth. That focus removes the fog of overthinking, second guessing, and emotional desperation that plagues so many men. It replaces it with clarity. You know who you are, you know what you're doing, you know why you're here, and because of that, no moment, sexual or otherwise, can knock you off course. The man who lives by purpose also redefines pleasure. He no longer needs pleasure to prove anything. He sees it as a beautiful experience, but not the core of his identity. This detachment from outcome is what makes him powerful, not because he doesn't feel, but because he chooses how to respond. He doesn't inflate when a woman praises him, and he doesn't shrink when she pulls back. His value isn't in her hands, it's in his alignment. That's not indifference. That's emotional discipline, and it's rare. But it's available to every man who's willing to stop chasing external validation and start leading from within. Rewriting the narrative also affects how you relate to women. You stop seeing them as judges of your worth. You stop trying to decode every word, every look, every action. You stop asking them to make you feel like a man. Instead, you meet them as an equal, not someone to impress or conquer, but someone to connect with authentically. That's when the quality of your relationships changes. Not because you figured out some trick to get what you want, but because you became the kind of man who no longer needs to play games to feel significant. You are no longer controlled by the fear of not being enough, and that freedom makes you unforgettable. This is how destinies are rewritten, not in grand external changes, but in the quiet, internal decision to no longer live from fear, from wounds, or from borrowed validation. It begins the moment you choose purpose over performance. It continues every time you feel the urge to react and instead return to your center. It strengthens with every experience that used to trigger you but now serves as a mirror, helping you refine who you are and how you lead yourself. This is the transformation that removes neediness, dissolves emotional chaos, and awakens a level of masculine power that isn't loud but undeniable.